Hi. So you're here because you want to hear the story about how I got almost insane of building my own ORM. Um, it's not as bad as it sounds actually. But I have to admit that I don't know if you know this feeling of being in the zone. During the weekend, I was so much thinking about all of this that I was walking around in the house and I saw like code in front of my eyes. And I have normal glasses, no augmented reality glasses. So um, yeah, that was interesting. But yeah, I wanted to share some considerations with you of the ORM that I'm building. We're building a framework here on the channel. There have been a couple of live streams past week. The framework is called Tempest, and its main goal is just to learn together. I do have some own projects that I want to use it on, but it's nothing like big, huge like Laravel. I don't mean to compete in any way with frameworks like Laravel or Symfony. So yeah, that's our goal here today. I want to show you some of the things I've been working on and dreaming about throughout the weekend. Basically, that's my goal. So, by the way, if you have any issues on the stream, let me know. I'm not sure. Well, I hope everything is okay. Basically, that's what I wanted to say. Um, I've built an ORM, or at least I'm in the process of building an ORM because it's the thing with the ORMs is it's very interesting, and on the other hand, it's very boring actually. Um, it's difficult to explain because like the core of an ORM is its goal is to map data from a database into objects so that you can access that data in a convenient way in your PHP code. So you're mostly dealing with writing queries and making sure everything maps correctly. So it's on the one hand it's technically challenging, but it's also just boring details. So yeah, I have very mixed feelings about it. But let me walk you through what I've been working on. So here is like the classic example that I've built in Tempest. Authors and books and chapters. I didn't invent this. I took it from, I think, Doctrine had it in its docs. But it's a good example because you have authors which have has many relation to books, and books has one belongs to relation to authors, and it also has chapters, which is another has many relations. So you have kind of like this relation throughout three classes, which is a good like way to test things basically. And one important thing, or at least something that was very important for me when designing this, is that I wanted to write as simple PHP code with as little as possible configuration, and I was kind of inspired by some of the things I wrote in the past, where maybe let's show it as Spatie data transfer object. This is a package I wrote a couple of years ago, and it's been archived now. But its goal was to map raw data from arrays of JSON data or whatever into PHP objects, basically. And well, if you think about it, an SQL query, it returns an array of data. Well, that's very similar to what I had been doing here with this package. The only issue is that you also have to do it the other way around, persistence. You have to be able to write things back to the database, which, well, it's not impossible. It's just a lot of work, basically. But this package that I wrote a couple of years ago really inspired me, and it was the syntax that I wanted to use as much as possible. So here we have an author model, and it implements the model class interface, uses a trait. We've talked about this before on stream and in previous videos and on Twitter. This is the approach I like taking now instead of using abstract classes. That's a discussion for another day. But like the model definition is here. It has a string property name, and it has an array of books, which is and has many relation to books. And what's important to me is that I have like static insights, right? So author, new author, which this isn't a good example actually, because I wanted to refactor it. Let's say name, brand. There are no static insights here, which we're going to fix, but I want you to explain what's going on. Let's just, well, no, let's say books. Books is an array, book new, and book has a title, hi, something like this, right? So what I like about these public properties that are typed is that you can use your objects like this, books, and you have auto-completion on everything basically. So that's yeah, that's the core of the core idea behind this. I want this to work, yeah, and I want it to be able to work with as little configuration as possible. So yeah, by the way, you don't have auto-completion here, which is why I like to actually wrap properties in a constructor and make them promoted properties. The previous approach works, but yeah, I like to do it like this, because then let's remove all of this. Then I can actually have a name here and get some insights into what I'm actually expected to give here. So, but the downside here is that it introduces, you know, another level of nesting, which some people might not like. I'm okay with it, but I actually pull everything out of the constructor for the stream just to show you how flat it can be if you don't need that many static insights, but I do. So good. So this is our starting point, and I was thinking, well, being able to hydrate these models, it shouldn't be that hard because I've already written all that code before. I wrote it again. I made some improvements, of course, but the main idea is pretty simple. You take some data, you take an array, and you map that into new author, something like this. So most of this is, of course, happening behind the scenes. And one very important thing missing here is that when we're talking about an ORM and databases, this array should come, of course, from a query, right? It started like raining like crazy here. I hope you you don't hear that. Let me move my microphone a little bit closer. So we go from SQL to a query result, and we map that into our author model here. And the other way around, we go from our author and we generate a query from that, and it goes to database. Writing very strange code here, but you get the ID. So it's data mapping. It's going from one thing to another and that's basically the core. And I want to show you what I did with that. Let's go to our ORM folder here, and let's go to the object factory. This is the core basically of how all of this works. An object factory, I probably need to come up with a better name. If you have some suggestions, you can let me know. But this thing is a factory for objects. No, it's actually a mapper manager. I don't know. Feel free to suggest names in chat. It has a collection of possible mappers. So an array to object mapper, a query to model, a model to query mapper, right? And it's configured. And in the end, it will loop over all of its mappers for a given class and data, and it will check, hey, can I map A to B? And if it can, it will return that result. Let me show you an example, because I showed you how with the ORM we're mapping a query to an array, and we map that array back to the object. But we can apply this principle to basically everything. And so this is one of the ideas that I wanted to experiment with. If we have a request, a validated request in Tempest, why not just map that request to a model? For example, we can create a mapper for that. We can say request to, I can try it as usual, to model mapper. And we don't have to worry about like moving data around, which is a very common use case in CRUD applications. But it's also very boring. It's why people write either abstract controllers, or they write generators to be able to move data around. And I want to have that process as frictionless as possible. Now, you don't need to do this. I showed this example on Twitter. You could also still manually say book is new book and pull data from the request. What's the title here? Title, request title, I think. Yeah, I don't have my request classes ready, so you could still do this, and it's all fine. If you need fine-grained control, you can do it this way. But if you don't, and in many cases you don't really need this much control because it's CRUD and it's all just moving data around from one place to another, and this approach might work fine. And it's also using the same mapper principles as that we're using to create queries and models and move data between those. Hey, Rob is letting me know that he loves how clear my routing is, thanks to attributes. Yeah, definitely. I agree. And I know some people don't agree with this approach. And I know it that much since I actually wrote, let me route attributes. I wrote a whole blog post about it. I'm not going to go through it on stream here, but you might want to check it out. These are the principles that we're going to use in Tempest. And it's going to be the only way that you can configure routing. Because I really believe all the benefits of dedicated route files, but it keeps routes and controller methods together, which is a good thing, I would say. But if you want to know more, you should read that blog post. So back to our ORM, because we have an array to object mapper, but we also have a query to model mapper, right? And actually, it's the model to query, right? Because we're thinking about, we want to, well, no. Is this one? It's we start with a query and we want to go to a model. Yeah, that's correct. Let's actually go to our base model trait and show you how this works in action. For example, update. We have, so let's imagine we change some parameters to our model here. We'll loop over them and actually set the keys. I actually have to change this part because we can use our mapper for this as well. But what we're going to do when we want to update, for example, an author here, let me actually go to the test, show you. So let's say we want to update foo with a new property of bar. We're going to make a query from this, which is basically the model with its updated data already set. And this is the same as saying map this to query. This is exactly the same. It's just the other way around. You might like one approach more than the other. That's up to you. In some cases, I prefer to use the make from paradigm. In other cases, map to. It makes a little more sense to me. But what we're going to do is to make a query from this, which is a base model. And well, base model, that's the trait we're in. It's basically any model that's using this trait. And we're going to execute that query. You might not like this. You might better prefer something like query or database connection, execute query. And I might actually still refactor Tempest to at least support this approach and not just this approach. The reason people don't like this one, it's more the Laravel way, which I will admit has some impact on my. It has some influences, but people don't like it because you have to resolve a dependency from the outside using service location, which isn't is yeah it has some downsides. I like the simplicity, and I don't think, based on my experience with Laravel, I don't think it has enough downsides to actually warrant a lot more code. But I might actually provide the other way around, the database connection approach, if people really want it. So yeah, back to our query. We're making a query from our model and we're executing it. And in this case, let's actually go to our query to model, no, our model to query mapper. So we have our model. We're going to determine the fields of the model, and I still have to refactor this code probably to a better place. If the model already has an ID, we're going to create a create query, and otherwise we're going to create an update query. And basically creating a query is just moving fields around and making sure everything is in the right order, and building the query, right? If you go to our query mapper test over here, there are some examples. Let's say you have an author and we make a new query from that author. Then the result will be insert into table, the column name, because author only has name. It has relations, but we're not going to insert those into this table here. And it's going to have some bindings over here. So that's the basic idea. If we have relations attached to it, which is entirely possible, is what we're going to do is still we're going to have an insert into books, right, with an author ID. So we're making a book here and a new author attached to it, but we don't have this author ID available yet, right? So we cannot really bind it to anything. But the cool thing is we can have nested queries. So let me actually show you that here. Let's dump my query. Let's run this code. And so the query is insert into book, title, author ID, values are two prepared statements. The title is just scalar value, that's book title, but author ID is another query. And when we're going to execute our initial query, we're first going to execute all these internal queries, which is how we can determine the ID. So once the query is actually executed, this value here will be replaced by the newly inserted author ID. Basically, that's how that works. Let's take a look at some of the comments here. Back to routing for a second. How would you handle slug translation or having CMS and letting users create route? We're not going to do that. It is actually possible. It is possible. The router is a dependency in a container, and you can add routes to it. We built that on the first stream, I think. So if you go to router here, generic router, you can register routes, right? You can do whatever you want, but the framework isn't going to like provide route files that are automatically loaded. Basically, that's my reasoning. At least for now. Let's see how it goes. Let's say take a look at other comments here. A big downside of AR, active record, and service location is unit testing. Yes, Laravel has great helpers for testing, but it needs a full world and it's slower than isolated unit tests. And that's right. Yeah, that's right. If you take a look at my unit tests here, they extend from the test case. And what happens in test case is the whole application, like the whole framework, is set up and the container is completely initialized. And yeah, you need this whole setup, and like the database is moved over. It's a SQLite database. So in my experience with Laravel, this approach works until a certain point, and then you do feel slowdowns, especially in tests. And you have to work around that. But remember that this framework, it's not meant to compete with Laravel. It's meant to first just learn things, because that's fun, and because I spent a whole weekend seeing code in front of my eyes. And second, maybe I will use it, and maybe some other people will use it for smaller projects, just prototyping, just quickly setting things up. Maybe you need some forms, some basic forms, some one pagers, stuff like that. It's very much a micro framework, and I think a micro framework can actually make these kinds of like opinionated design decisions. It doesn't have to serve everyone's need. If you want that, you can go to use a framework like Laravel or Symfony. Where is the make function defined? Good question. There's this whole file of global functions that are bad and people hate it. But actually, it's very convenient. You don't need to use this, and I will make it optional, probably in the end result. So these functions here, they are just shortcuts, right? They also rely on dependency, like service location. If you didn't want to use this make function here, let's go to our book controller, right? Or the map function, which is the same thing, but the other way around. What you could do is inject object factory, and write it like this. So factory for class book from request save. By the way, do you like how we have auto-completion here? Like my PHP storm knows that I'm dealing with a book, an instance of book here. That's pretty nice. So you could do this and it would work fine. The thing is, it requires you to write more code for exactly the same result, basically. So I really like this approach, and I know some functions might collide when you install other packages, but it comes back to the mindset of this micro framework. I don't really expect too many big things being built with this. It's built for small prototyping projects, right? So please don't go build like a full I don't know. No, I have no inspiration. Don't build real projects with this, right? Basically, in that context, I just prefer to write less code if it has the same result. That's my my reasoning here. I actually asked it on Twitter a couple. Oh yeah, I also asked about Active Record and Data Mapper, and the results were pretty close. But I also just asked now, an hour ago, if people actually run into problems with global functions, because Laravel also does this, and it seems like the majority at this point doesn't really run into problems, or they just don't like final. That's fine as well. So that's about it. Another question: how do you handle multiple connections? I don't think this framework should handle multiple connections, at least not for now. So that's it. Someone says this code looks like a disaster. Well, thank you. You don't have to use it. And then I think gotta love template annotations. Yeah, definitely. That's what makes all of this work, right? This auto completion. If you go take a look at map, well, actually at the to method here, we just use some generic template annotations. Would be nice if PHP supported generics, but again, yeah, that's a topic for another day. Adam perfectly summarizes my thoughts. So yeah, let's go back to our mapping here, because I showed you a simple example of create test of mapping. Mapping models into queries, basically. so that you get insert statements and let's take a look, update statements, of course, as well. If you already have an ID, you're not creating a new model, you're updating an existing one. So that all works. But you also have to do it the other way around. Yeah. And that's basically the same approach as well. If you go to base model, instead of providing a model, we now want to provide a query and ask our mapper to give a model back, right? So if you go to our find function here, it's a bit more complicated and it's still work in progress. If you want to, let's take a look. Yeah. This is the most simple thing you can think about, just resolving one model from the database. This function, and I still have to refactor this a bit and move things to better classes, but this function will build a query and it will use that same mapper and say make something of my own class, basically the model that's being called on, and make that from this query. And then the query to model mapper, it will, let's take a look. It will, oh yeah, it will, so this is a query object, right? It will fetch data, which is an array, and it will use the mapper again, and it will say make an object, a model object from that array of data. And that's basically it. If we have a collection, we'll loop over that. So it's just data mapping all over the place, basically. I really like that approach. It's definitely not done yet, but I think I made quite a lot of progress, and I like how it all worked out, basically. Let's take a look at other comments here. I wanted IDE color scheme. So I have a video. This is going to be, yeah. I have a video. It's called PHP Storm, something like that. How to set up PHP Storm, where I go over how I set up PHP Storm, but it's already a bit outdated actually, because I'm now using the new UI, and this one was, hey, that's me. This one was when I was using the old UI, basically. But you can check it out, and there's a link in the description here to my team, which is this one, which I really like. And maybe you can guess where the colors. Oh, it's already mentioned here. It's just it's the colors of Google's logo, basically, and it looks pretty nice. Yeah. Graham Grum not a number asks whether I built a query builder. Not yet. Well, yeah, kind of, and then I moved away from it. I'm going to do that. But I just want to have a general feeling of how things work, and then I can refactor from there. So that's my approach here. I write quite a lot of ugly code. I write tests for them, and I make sure everything works from the outside, and then I start refactoring. So I like that approach. Give me quite a lot of certainty, actually. Good. So yeah. What else did I want to say about the ORM stuff here? Oh yeah, I also have caster support. Yeah, if you want, well, base model is a good example of it. Base model has an ID field, and I like to use a value object here because you can have UIDs or integer IDs, and I want that to be like transparent for the user. So all database IDs are converted to ID objects, basically. I still have to add methods here, like equals and stuff like that. But I also have casters, which if you know Laravel, you're familiar with them. Whenever the ORM or the mapper actually encounters a property that requires an ID, it will basically call this caster here, and it will transform whatever data was given to an ID It's a very naive approach, actually, and I might not cover all like all edge cases here, but we'll find it out during during my development. You can make your own casters, and you don't have to put them like on the target class, because this is this ID will always use this caster. You could also put them on properties themselves. Like, let's take a look at Arthur here. You could say, for example, cast with, I don't know, Arthur name caster, something like this. So yeah, as little configuration as possible. This is something I prefer to use instead of what Laravel does with its casts method, I think, or its casts array, and then yeah, that's that was one of the things I wanted to show you. And then there was one last thing, and that's migrations. Migrations are managed by the migration manager. Let's take a look what this is going to do. Well, actually, let's show a test case here. Base model test, probably. So I also have a helper method in my base test case, where you can run migrations, basically, because every time you run your test, you'll use a clean new database. So every test case can basically call which migrations it wants. Yeah, let's take a look at one of those. So the create migrations table, actually, let's import this. Oh yeah, I'm already using, yeah, there's a name collision there. Doesn't matter. The migration interface, it has a get name and an up and a down method. Get name, I might use the class name in the long run. I don't know yet. I still have to figure this out, but this was convenient just for now. This is very familiar to Laravel. You get a table builder and you add rows to it, and basically create a table. Let's show you the example of the book. Book migration. No, author migration. It is create author table. That's it. So we name the table based on the author model here. And for now, I'm just using the class name. I could convert it to something like authors, but I don't really mind using the class name as my table names, actually. I add rows, and yeah, that's basically it. The down method simply drops the table for now. So yeah, that are migrations. That's not very difficult. Oh, maybe one thing to mention, of course, is that whenever a migration is run, a new record is written to the migrations table so that you know that it has run and you don't need to rerun it again. So yeah, I think that was the last big part of the ORM, and like the last big thing I did over the weekend. I'm pretty happy with where I got, but there are still quite a lot of work to do. For example, if we go to our base model test here, like resolving nested relations already kind of works, but not entirely. I still have to fix that. But the cool thing is, that's something pretty nice. You could use map new query, and you can write like custom queries however you want. So let's say author class. So we want to map to our author. I could say select star from author. I'm not going to bother with with styling here. You say inner join author books on author books dot author ID equals author dot ID, something like this, and the mapper will be smart enough to load the author with its books relations, basically. Now, of course, you don't have to write this yourself. There are going to be convenience methods, basically, that do this for you. But I really, really like this approach. In a way, it feels very natural and straightforward to me, and it makes it easy to like reason about what's going on. So yeah, that is about it, I think. I did want to implement one more feature, by the way, together on stream. I didn't really think this through, but what I would really like to do is I have this, like, where's a good example? Oh yeah, of course, in my book controller. Right, route binding basically is what I want to do, because this doesn't work yet. This mapping doesn't do anything, and yeah, let's think how we can implement it. I actually think it won't be all that difficult, because if you remember from the second stream, I think I explained how initializers work, and I think so. When this method is called, basically, it's going to ask the container whether it has any dependencies it can inject. And in this case, the book dependency should be, it should be a model that's resolved based on the ID that's given in the URI here. And we can use, I think we can do most of that just in the route, in an initializer class. So let's go to our router test. Let's write a test for that. Let's say test route binding, and we'll have to do some setup work, of course. So I'm doing high level tests. I know they are slow. It doesn't matter at the moment. So this migrate, the migration table, migrations table like this, and the create author or book table. Do I have a migration for that? Yeah. Okay, good. And then we'll have to resolve the router, which is this container get router. Yeah. And what we want to do is dispatch a request, which I have a helper method for, to /books1, basically. Okay. And it should map to this method, right? Response, and let's make sure assert same response status, and it should be status 200. Okay, let's run this test. It's going to fail, of course. Okay, and the error is what I expected to be. So it was able to map this ID to this variable, but we're expecting a book here, basically. If I would change it to string or int, this would be 1, right? But we don't really want to do that. So let's make an initializer for that. And I should probably, I can just move here, route binding initializer implements initializer. It only has one method. No, I can initialize. I should implement that because this initializer is like a generic initializer that's registered in the container. So what we want to know if class name, if the object we're requesting is an instance of model, basically. And I don't know, actually don't know if we can do a class name instance of model. I don't know if that works. No, it always goes to false. So I think implement class, yeah. I have a code snippet, basically. So the interface, because PHP doesn't have a proper way of doing this. Okay, so if interface, so you get the class implements, which gives an array of all the interfaces that a given class implements. You check whether it has the model interface in it. And if that's the case, then this initializer can handle initializing this class. So let's do it like this. And let's go to our kernel where we have to do this once, register our initializer. Let's actually put it here, route binding initializer. Okay, and let's just check whether we end up here. No, we don't. I hoped we would. And the error is string given. Actually, let's check if we end up here. Yeah, we do, but there are quite a lot of times this happens. So let's actually make a conditional breakpoint here. Class name equals what would it be? Book. Let's see whether this works. I might need to use double dashes. This is annoying. Like so. Let's check whether our debugger triggers now. No, that's annoying. Use is A. I should check chat more often. Is this built in? You guys are amazing. Okay. I thought this was a Laravel thing. Object or class. So class name is model class. Okay, let's see if it works. It doesn't, but it could very well be that I'm not going to use debugger now because it doesn't work. If class name equals book class, let's dump class name and let's dump this one. See, it never ends up here. That's kind of annoying. Third param has to be true. Allow string. Okay, yeah, makes sense. Thanks for pointing that out, Remco. But my main issue actually is I should have kept my thingy here true. My main issue is that the controller isn't, the container isn't used, so I should route generic router over here. Let's take a look. This is code that we wrote 2 streams ago. I wonder if I can still remember everything. So, okay, we dispatch our request, and so the error we're getting is that argument must be of type books, but string is given. So it means that we're already, you know why? I know why it happens. So, route params. Let's take a look. So it has a parameter for book, meaning the container won't, it does this check, right? It thinks, well, it knows we already have a parameter for book, so we cannot use an initializer here. Yeah, I should probably think about that. Yeah, interesting. Because I really wanted to use. So basically, what would happen if this worked? Then the container would call the controller method, and it would detect that book. That book isn't present, and it would try to initialize it via the container, and we can hook into that via this initializer here, which I think is a good approach. But it means that we either have to get rid of our book ID here, or our container should be smart enough to detect whether this parameter, would that be too hacky? So doing a check like class name. So it's checking whether book exists, and we also have the method name available, so we could this is our show method in the controller. We could do get argument, get parameters, which means we can resolve the book parameter, and which means we can check whether this book parameter actually accepts like this parameter type. In this case, it's a string. And if that's not the case, we could resolve, basically do this. We could resolve the like the actual dependency and try it again, basically. Would that be too hacky? I want to try it this way because I still really like the initializer approach. There are other ways I could do it. I could do these checks in the router, which might be a better place, because I'm going to do it in the container first, and I'll think about it. Yeah, I'll have to think about it some more. So basically what we want to say here. So if array key exists isn't good enough. If it doesn't exist, it's pretty simple. We'll do this, right? We'll just resolve whatever dependency we want from the container, because we don't have a dependency already. We don't have a route argument. That's good. But if the key exists, we want to check whether the parameters. So let's put them here. Method parameters. We want to check whether the types can be accepted. Yeah. So method parameters. And you know, I find it's so stupid that these keys aren't the names of the parameters, because now I have to like do an array filter to find the first one, which kind of sucks. But I'm just, you know what I said a couple of minutes ago? Let's just write the dirty code first, and then clean it up afterwards, right? So parameters. So for each method parameters, method parameter, if there are parameters in parameters that I really need to make sure that we're doing the right thing here, which is why we should refactor it. Yeah. So if class name method parameter get name matched parameter matched parameters is this one, right? Yeah. Let's take a look at it if it works. Yeah, we have our parameter now. That's good. And now we want to compare the type. And basically, if this type can accept whatever we're giving it, we can continue. And otherwise, we should resolve it from the container, right? So original value is this, I think. Yeah, that's our string. That's good. So we have our string and we have our matched parameter. And now we have to check whether, is there like a function in PHP that compares types? I hope so. Is A, probably. Let's take a look actually what it does. Checks if the object is of this class and has it. But this doesn't cover scalar values. Maybe we should first filter that out. So if matched parameter get type is built in, will return, well, we won't return anything. We'll just continue because we're in a loop here. But if it's not built in, we'll still end up here. Method parameter, right? Yeah. And now we can use is A. If what's our value? What do we, original value is A, object or class. If original value is like so, of course it doesn't work. Get name. I know there, I should do some null checks here, by the way. Compare get type of both. Thank you, chat. Get type. Is that? That doesn't work. Oh, it's without, of course it's without an underscore. Get type. Okay. So if matched parameter get type get name. Well, this, yeah, let's just assume this is good enough. Let's assume it's okay. Get type of original value. So if this is the case, we can continue. We don't have to do anything, and otherwise we'll have to resolve from the container. And we already had our parameter. I think that was, it doesn't work because it checks the value. Let's run our code. Let's see what happens here. Get type original value, right? Let's run our code. String. It looks like Remco has like a built-in compiler. Doesn't work because it checks the value and type name returns always string. Yeah. Oh, but we should then we should just do this, right? Right? Get type original value. Book and string, these aren't equal. And then we'll, okay. And now, yeah, now we're actually here. It worked. And with some luck, now we're here. Yes. Nice. Cool. Very nice. The only thing we still need, so we have our class name now, which is book, which is good. We can use it to return class name find, but we still need the ID, right? And we need the ID from the container, basically from the router. So let's just do router container get. And remember, this is code that's run inside the container, so I don't really mind using get calls here. So we have the router, but now what we need to do, we still need to access our like currently matched route, right? We need the ID. Which we get from, let's take a look, our route params here. So I wonder, we have to access these route params somewhere. I know what I'm going to do. I'm just going to make a value class, route params. Is this okay? So what I want to do is like this container singleton route params class. This only happens once every request, right? Because we're only ever handling one request per request. And we're going to return new route params. Public array params. Something like this. Right. And now if we do container get route params, here we are. It works. We still need to resolve we still need to know exactly which route parameter we're using, but because this is like model binding, I'm fairly confident we can just use the class name, or at least a form of it. Okay, so with all of you showing like great new functions and teaching me, is there an easy way to get book from this namespace without creating a reflection class? I might actually create a reflection class. Let me know if there's a better way. A class name, I don't know, class name. No, that's okay. Let me know. I'll write this code and then I can remove it once you you've told me what's the better approach here. So class name, new reflection class, like this. Get short name, I think. Get short name book, and now we'll just LC lowercase first letter. Why is this an error? What's going on here? It doesn't show the error. What? Hang on a second. It's confused. It's because, yeah. Because I LC first, I had to add a bracket like this. So now, okay. Param name, that's this one. Yeah, param name. Find, and then we actually don't need a router. We can just use route params. And we'll have to clean this up, of course. So route params, param name. Okay. Let's see what happens. Could not resolve from here because find argument 1 ID must be of type ID, of course. New ID, but I'll have to refactor that because I definitely want find to be able to accept integers and strings. Let's take a look at the thing here. Mm-mm-mm. So it does go to the find, and it doesn't work because did I actually create something? No, I didn't. So let's say book create name is test. No, title. This is why I should use the new syntax. Oh yeah, author, new author name. Like this. And now there's no author table. Create author table. Oh, it works. Look at that. I actually didn't expect that. What we still want to do though is go to our book controller here. Instead of returning this, let's return response. Should I? Oh, yeah, response, okay. Body is book title. And now we return a response instead of a view. Test still works. And now assert same test response get body. And it works. Nice. Cool. It works, but I'll have to sleep on this. Because I'm not quite sure whether... I think that the biggest question still is if we need to like do... I'm in the wrong class. Generic container. If we need to do these checks here in the container or not, basically. That's what I'll have to sleep about. And maybe you can leave your suggestions in the comments as well. But if I would change this, I would move it to the router. I'm just trying to think of whether it makes sense to keep it here or not. Yeah, I'm not sure. Let me know your thoughts in the comments or in chat, but we're going to end stream soon, so it will probably be in the comments. But I really like this live coding session. It was definitely something different than my previous 2 streams because I didn't prepare this, as you noticed. But still, it was pretty fun, and I learned 2 or 3 new things, or at least I was remembered by you guys about them. So yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I think with all of that, we're going to conclude. Thanks for watching. As always, subscribe, leave a comment, leave a like as well. Share this with your friends. Share your ideas in the comments or find me on Twitter. And I'm looking forward to the next stream because we'll keep working on Tempest and we'll keep building it. So I will see you in the next one. Thanks for being here. Bye-bye.